Yá'át'ééh, my relatives. Hello, this is Mark Charles. It is Friday, June 17th already. I have no idea how we got this far into the month so quickly. But I am sitting here with my second cup of coffee, and I wanted to talk with you about some stuff I've been looking at this week regarding gas prices. So I see Phil Fox is on with me. Yá'át'ééh, Phil, thanks for joining. And I wanted to talk a little bit about gas prices and climate change for a few minutes. But before I begin, let me do as I always do, which is acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from what's now known as Washington, D.C., but these are the traditional lands of the Piscataway. And I want to honor and thank the Piscataway for their stewardship of these lands. And I want to just state how humbled I am to be living on these lands today. So, if you've been paying attention over the last several months, you know that most Americans, and especially our government officials, have been having literally a hissy fit over the price of gas. And it has been rising, right? There's no doubt about that. It's risen literally by about $2 in the past year. In May of 2021, we were paying about $2.07, $2.10 a gallon of gas. And I believe this week we've now reached an average price of over $5, somewhere between $5.05 and $5.15 per gallon. So that's literally about a $2 rise in gas prices in just the past year alone. And of course, not only has the pandemic and all of the supply chain issues with that been a factor in this, but also, of course, the war in Ukraine and especially the sanctions we put onto Russia and trade with them regarding gas has had a huge impact on gas prices around the country, and even not just around the country, around the world. And so it's been a crisis, right? Because as Americans, we are used to having massively subsidized and cheap gas prices. And when we don't get that, we tend to think the sky is falling. And so I want to just put a few things in perspective for you, because I've known for a long time that most nations pay a much higher gas than we do. And it's not because oil is more expensive around the globe, primarily. It's because of the tax rate that most nations charge for their gas prices. And so I decided just to do a little research this week. And I went back to 2019, before COVID hit, and I began looking at gas prices in 2019, and I wanted to compare them to the gas prices today. And what I found was fairly fascinating. And so I'm going to share quite a bit of stuff with you today. The first is this chart here. I found this on a site out of Europe, out of London. It's called the AA. It's kind of their automobile association website. And they had this chart that showed gas prices around Europe in December of 2019, both in liters and in liters, but for their local currency, as well as for the UK pence or the pound. And so this gave me some data, but it wasn't converted into US dollars. And so I took that data and I found some exchange rate data, and I looked at exchange rates from around late or November, December of 2019. And this is what I came up that most nations in Europe were paying for gas in December of 2019. So Austria was paying in US dollars about $1.38 a liter. There's about 3.7 liters in a gallon. So their gallon was coming out to $5.22 a gallon. The Netherlands was paying $1.87 a liter, and that came out to $7.09 a gallon. Norway was paying $1.89, and theirs came up to $7.14. The UK was paying 169, which came out to about 640 a gallon. Germany, one of the other major economies of the EU, is paying 154 a liter, came out to 582 a gallon. And we were paying in the USA 67 cents a liter, which came out to 254 a gallon. Now, the reason for that huge disparity, again, it's not that gas is that particularly more expensive in Europe than it is here, or at least to produce and to sell. It's the tax rate. So in the UK, most they have an agreement, and they have both kind of an excise tax on gas, as well as another tax, kind of an end. You think it's an ATC tax, or a VAT tax, a value added tax, which is taxed at the end. But the majority of their taxes is not that value added tax. It's prior to that. This is coming from the Tax Foundation information, their website. And so in this is per gallon in US dollars, what they're paying in tax, right? So again, in Austria, they're paying 203, and this is from 2020, January of 2020. They're paying 203 a gallon in tax. In Germany, they're paying 276 a gallon in tax. In places like the Netherlands, which had a high rate, they're paying some of the highest. They're paying of 80.8 euros or 339 a gallon in their gasoline tax. The UK was paying about 276 per gallon in gasoline tax. The average in Europe was 55 cents. Again, that's in euros, or 235 a gallon, and this is per liter, and this is per gallon, in tax on gasoline. In the US, and ours vary pretty broadly based on the state. I found this article in Forbes, so I'm going to share this article with you. I'll put it into the comment section here. This is the Forbes article, and in here they had a chart by Statista where they show the highest tax rate per state. So there's an 18.4% federal tax on every gallon of gas, and then the states charge different. So anywhere from, I think California is charging about a 45-cent tax right now, and then this is the top 10: California, Pennsylvania, Illinois, New Jersey, Nevada, Washington, Hawaii, New York, Florida, and Indiana. So California's total tax is 63 cents. Indiana's total tax is 42 cents. And then they go down lower beyond that. And again, so this is January of 2021. So California was paying 338. Pennsylvania was paying 270. Indiana was paying 230 a gallon. And so what's really striking, right? So let's go back to this chart that I have here. So this is the converted chart of what we were paying per gallon back in 2019. And then this is the tax that I found globally from just a number of different sources. Some I had to convert, some I found directly in US dollars. Of just looking at gas prices, again, comparing December 2019 to June 2022. And you'll see, for example, France in 2019 was paying 171 a liter, 646 a gallon. Today they're paying 219 a liter and 827 a gallon. This is all in US dollars. Netherlands was paying 187 per liter, 709 per gallon, and 247 and 933 a gallon. Places like Mexico is paying 95 cents a liter, and they're paying 115 a liter now and 436 a gallon today. Israel was paying 170 a liter, 643 a gallon in 2019, and in June they're paying $2.10 and $7.94. The US, again, we're paying 67 cents per liter in 2019 and $2.54 a gallon in December. And we're paying about $1.37 a liter today and $5.19 a gallon today. And what's fascinating about that, right, is our $5.19 is about on par with what most other nations were charging 3 years ago. So this is where we have to talk about what are we doing, right? So right now, our price is hitting about what the rest of the world was paying 3 years ago. And we are complaining about it as a nation. Why? Well, because we're used. We think we're entitled. We have the right to have cheap gasoline. And having cheap gasoline is what enables us to buy more massive cars, right? And to not think about our driving habits, which is one of the things that is literally fueling the climate crisis today. And this is where I truly believe that the Biden administration is absolutely missing an opportunity, because his short-sightedness of just wanting to get reelected in 2024 is actually causing him to do things that are detrimental to the long-term health, not only of our economy, but I would say even of our globe. Let me share something with you. So this was, let me turn this off here. So last week on the White House's website, Joe Biden, on the 14th of, actually earlier this week, on the 14th of this month, Joe Biden gave a speech to the AFL-CIO about jobs, especially union jobs. And in his speech, he mentioned climate change and global warming. And he made the exact same statement he made throughout his entire campaign for president in 2020, which is, he said, when I think global warming, I think jobs, 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 good paying union jobs, jobs you can raise a family on, jobs you can't be outsourced. See, the problem with Joe Biden, and I would argue with every president our nation has had over the past several decades, is that they put our economy and the prosperity of Americans over and above literally everything else. And the reason they do that is because that's what gets them reelected. And that's what allows their party to remain in power. If they can allow Americans to prosper, they're going to want to continue with the same administration. And so it was Bill Clinton who said, it's the economy, stupid. I mean, this was the realization he made during his presidency back in the 1990s. And the problem is it's actually not about the economy. It's about living sustainably and about taking care of this globe that we're living on. And as you've heard me say many, many, many times before, the American lifestyle is not sustainable. We are 1/20th of the global population, and we consume a quarter of the world's resources. If the rest of the world consumed like the average American, the renewable resources of our planet would be depleted every year by the month of April. The American lifestyle is absolutely not sustainable, and gas prices demonstrates that, right? We have some of the biggest cars. We consume the most, so much gasoline per household. And it's because we feel we have a right to cheap gasoline. which doesn't make us curb our consumption. So we can buy massive cars without really thinking about it. We can travel anywhere we want, anytime we want, everywhere we want to go without thinking about it. We feel we're entitled to that. Meanwhile, most of the globe is paying 2 to 3 times the price that we've been paying for gas. And now that our gas price is catching up even to where they were 3 years ago, we're having a hissy fit. Now, I do not deny for a moment that higher gas prices is making life challenging for many Americans. Even our own family, right? I don't deny that. Our family, we were driving a large Chevy Traverse for the past 11 years. We bought it when we lived on the reservation back in Arizona. We needed it. We got it because of the dirt roads and the mud we had to drive through back there. And it served us well. But here in DC, it was literally getting 17 to 20 miles to a gallon. Just driving around the city, getting our kids to school every day. We were spending between $50 and $70 a week on gas pre-pandemic and even pre-COVID, or pre-war in Ukraine. And so late last year, early this year, when we had some more problems with our car, it was in a minor accident, and we realized we needed to do something that was more sustainable. We made the transition from a Chevy Traverse to we bought a Honda Accord hybrid. And that was not inexpensive, right? I don't deny that for a moment. One of the ways we were able to afford it, though, was because of the amount of money we were saving, we would save on gas every week. So we were literally spending between $50 and $75 a week on gas with our Traverse. Before the war started in Ukraine, we were literally spending about $10 to $15, maybe about $10 a week on gas, maybe $15 a week on gas. We were saving almost $50 a week on gasoline, which allowed us to set more money aside to make the higher car payment, because we didn't have car payments for a number of years because we had paid off our Traverse. And so we made that transition, but we did it because we knew that not only was the Traverse we were driving not doing good things for the environment, but we knew that we needed to kind of tighten our belt so that we could live more sustainably. And even now, with gas prices the way they are now, we're literally spending maybe $25 a week on gas. And so the car is, while it's not entirely paying for itself, it is definitely helping us pay for itself because of how much money it's saving us on gas. Now, I know not everyone is able to make those kind of choices, but the thing I really want to encourage us to do, and this is something because our government's not doing it right now, right? The war in Ukraine, inflation, everything else, Joe Biden is literally just trying to tell Americans what he's always promised America, is that we can still prosper while we deal with climate change. And that's not true. We can't prosper while we deal with a global crisis like climate change. And this is where, if our politicians had courage, they would use things like the war in Ukraine to strategically challenge Americans to make different, better, and more sustainable choices. I want to share with you a few articles here. The first one is by The Guardian. And it says here in this article, I'm going to put this into the comment section. The article is titled, "For 50 years, governments have failed to act on climate change. No more excuses." And I want to actually bring back my shared screen because there's something I want to show you on this article. And where did I put it? Oh, I don't have it there. Let me pull it up just a second here. Here's a paragraph I wanted to read to you. Unless one is invested in fossil fuels, there is now no reason not to take the clean energy path. Many corporate actors understand the need for early action on this front, but governments still need to incentivize the transition. The evolving Just Energy Transition Package may yet offer an investment pathway that can accelerate deployment in emerging and developing countries. Corporate action towards other targets, such as reduction of methane emissions, also need to be encouraged. So instead of doing everything he can do to get prices back to pre-war, even pre-pandemic levels, what if our government said, yeah, we're paying higher prices. Let's use these higher prices to change our behavior. Let's rethink how we work, how we transport ourselves, and let's incentivize and invest in more renewable and cleaner energy. Instead of trying to lower prices so more people can afford to drive their SUVs, let's incentivize people transitioning from SUVs to smaller cars that get better gas mileage. See, if our government and our political leaders had courage, they would be able to tell the American people, you're not entitled to everything you think you are. And dealing with a global crisis is going to require some massive modification on our nation's behavior. Instead of just continuing to tell Americans, no, you're entitled to low prices and to cancerous-like consumption. And so I'm do everything to make sure that you continue to prosper, even though you are literally destroying the globe for not only future generations, but even for impoverished people who are living today. There's another article I want you to show you. This came out by the UN a few weeks ago, and there's two paragraphs I want to highlight here. It says there are 46 countries spanning from Afghanistan to Zambia that are considered least developed countries, LDCs. They are home to about 13% of the world's population and 40% of its poorest people. They are highly vulnerable to countless shocks, the economic, public, health, to climate change. They remain at the forefront of the climate crisis and are disproportionately affected by extreme weather events. And unfortunately, they lack critical financing to support climate resilient measures and infrastructure. So they're saying we have to deal with climate change in 2022 because the most vulnerable of our world is going to end up paying the price much before the wealthier, more affluent nations are going to have to pay the price. And lest we think that because we live in America, we are going to somehow be immune to this, I want to share this article with you that ran earlier this week, I think, in Politico. And it's about a study that was done, an investigation into FEMA, and how their systemically racist policies of aid and grants help white and rich Americans escape floods. In this article, it says FEMA has allocated billions of dollars of flood mitigation money using a racially inequitable system that has favored saving flood-prone houses in rich areas or in communities that are almost entirely white, using costly projects that elevate the homes above flood levels, and investigation by political E&E News shows. The elevation grants have helped turn dozens of wealthy or overwhelmingly white areas into enclaves of climate resilience. The communities are seeing rising property values and economic stability, while much of the nation faces devastating effects of rising seas and intensifying floods. So, yeah, this is happening even within our own nation, right? As we know this, right? This is what systemic white supremacy and racism does, is it helps those at the center and leaves out those from the margins. I mean, this is no surprise to anyone, but this is what happens. And so while our president, our senators, our Congress, our leaders may not be telling us we need to curb our consumption and change our behavior, I want to start encouraging us, all of us, to curb our consumption and change our behaviors. We are not going to get through this climate crisis if our focus and our belief system tells us that we can maintain the level of prosperity we believe we're entitled to. We can't do it. We must curb our consumption. We must change our behavior. And Americans, more so than any other nation in the world, because we so overly consume the world's resources, we have to change the greatest. It embarrassed me that President Obama went to Africa during his last year in office and told Africans, some of the people at the bottom of the financial hierarchy, that they could not live like Americans because that would be unsustainable for the globe. And then he went on to spend tens of millions of dollars on a house in Martha's Vineyard a few months later. They couldn't have air conditioning. They couldn't drive cars, but as an American, even a Black American, he could do whatever the hell he wanted. That was the message that I'm sure they heard and I'm sure they saw. And that's where we have to have some integrity. We must curb our consumption. We must change our behavior if we want to address this climate crisis. So those are the things I've been thinking about. And while I do not deny that the rising gas prices are a hardship for many, many, many people, it is. I want to encourage us to use this hardship that we're all experiencing to be creative and to think creatively about what we need to do to change our behavior. My wife and I have been trying to do that living here in DC. Again, as I told you before, we were able to purchase a hybrid, which massively changed the amount of gas we were consuming. And we're looking a lot at what can we do to curb our consumption, especially to lessen our use of plastics and other things that are also, again, destroying the environment. We're using a service right now. It's not in every city. It was started, I think, in Philadelphia, and then maybe it came here. It's called The Rounds. It's a place where you can get kind of the necessities. You don't get fresh foods there and fresh vegetables, but you can get staples like pasta and other things, staples food as well as staples for the household. But they deliver it to you by bicycle. And we get coffee through that. We get some cleaning supplies through that. We get some things like olive oil and other pastas and stuff like that through this service. And it's actually not that much more expensive than it is buying it in the grocery store. But A, it's delivered to us by bikes. They have bikes they run around the city on. But B, they buy it in bulk and they deliver it in reusable containers. And so we're not, instead of buying a small bag of pasta wrapped in a plastic bag, we're able to buy pasta that comes to us in a jar that we return to the service for them to reuse after we use the pasta of it. The same thing with our coffee, the same things with other things that we purchase from it. And it's kind of a creative way to like think about how are we helping the environment. And a lot of it is, right, it's our single-use plastics and our single-use containers that we buy everything in, and how can we reduce that. I actually had a great conversation just yesterday with the guy from the rounds who was making his delivery to our house, and we were able to talk about just a value for trying to live more sustainably. And so that's one thing that we've been doing. And I just want to encourage people to think about what can we do, curb our consumption and modify our behavior. And let's think creative. Let's share ideas, talk about things, so that we can actually address this climate crisis. Yes, there are things we have to do because of crisis that confront us. But when we don't take advantage of these things that are raising our gas prices and use that instead to change our behavior, instead of just get back to our pre-pandemic, pre-inflationary levels that we feel entitled to, then nothing's going to change. And if we keep treating the climate like a backseat problem, we're never going to solve it, because there will always be things that feel more urgent. And if we wait to address the climate, and we're almost to that point now where it's absolutely urgent to address it, it may be too late. So let's work on it now. That's my encouragement to you, my relatives. I hope this is helpful. I hope that this spurs all of us to be more creative and to think about what we can do to change our behavior. And I hope it helps us to demand more of our leaders, right? One of the things I'm recognizing our leaders don't have, by and large, is courage. They don't have courage. They find what the American people want, and then they give it to them. And as Americans, we believe, we've been told we're entitled to cancerous-like consumption. We've been told that's our right, that's our birthright. We've been told we can have whatever we want. And that's not true. And we need leaders who are able to tell the American people that we're not entitled to almost everything we think we are. And if we don't have leaders who are willing to speak to our people honestly in that capacity, we're not going to solve these problems. And neither the Republicans nor the Democrats are willing to make that challenge. They're fine. They're more than happy to tell you how our problems are the other party's problem. And if the Republicans just did that and the Democrats just did this, we would all be fine. But they're not willing to say, no, we need to do things differently as a nation if we're going to make it through these crises that we're going through. I see Tam is on here. Thank you, Tam, for joining today. Judy, thank you for getting on. Bobby, thank you so much for joining today. I'm really excited to see some new names here. Someone called Really Reform Plush. I'm not sure what that stands for, but Reform Plush. But thanks for joining today. Yeah, it's good to have everybody on here. Sarah, Yá'át'ééh, thanks for taking time to join today. Steve, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining today. Tammy, thanks for joining today. It's good to have these chances to talk. I'm hoping to get back on schedule with some more second cups of coffee next week, as well as things going on for my Patreon. I want to just give you a few updates. So if you like the work I'm trying to do and you want to find a way to partner with me in it, you can always subscribe to my Patreon. And once a month, I have Q&As, I have lectures, I have book studies that are for different tiers of my Patreon. And I encourage you to look at my Patreon site. And if you like the work that I'm doing, please partner with me by subscribing to it. I'm continuing to work on and planning my On Selling Truths book tour. And if you're interested in learning more about that and helping me with that, you can visit my GoFundMe page. And then I've been promoting, a lot of you have seen this, I think, but we got some good news recently. It was last week I got this card. It came from my publisher. They congratulated me that On Selling Truths, the book I co-authored with my good friend Sung-Chan Ra, is now in its 8th printing. And so it continues to just expand its reach and initiate more dialogues. And so I'm really excited about the continued success of this book and how well it's doing. And if you are interested in purchasing a signed copy of my book, you can always get those on my website, and I'm putting those up right here. And I actually am offering kind of a new special or a new product right now. Not a new product, but a new special. Let me turn off this graphic here a minute. But on my website now, for people who want to do a book study with On Selling Truths, I'm offering what I'm calling a book study special. So for $200, you will get 10 signed copies of On Selling Truths. I will ship those copies free anywhere in the continental United States that has a US or to a single US address. If you want to have them shipped to different addresses, you can still do that. It'll be $3 per book to ship it that way, but I'll ship them free to a single address in the US. And then with that, we will schedule with your book study a 45-minute virtual Q&A. A chance for me to jump on with your study at any point in your study you want to go. If you're doing it monthly, if you're doing it weekly, at some point during your study, I will work with my team to schedule a Zoom call where we can jump online, and I can jump online and do a Q&A with you in your study. And so I'm doing this as a way to encourage people to talk about this book, to think through it, especially within local areas or local communities, or communities within companies or organizations or even churches. But it really, I think, will foster some really good dialogue. So if you're interested in that, you can see that on my website. I actually gave you the link here directly to my Square website, but you can also see it on the normal page. You'll see the link for it there too. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining me today. This was really good. I've been thinking about these gas prices, and I've been kind of poring over this data and trying to collect it for the past several days. And I was glad we had a chance to talk about what we need to do as Americans to continue to confront the climate crisis that we're facing. So yeah, my relatives, I'm hoping to watch the sunrise tomorrow morning. I actually missed it one day this week because I was too tired, but it's supposed to be clear tomorrow morning. So I'm hoping to watch the sunrise tomorrow morning. And we're almost to the longest day of the year. So obviously June 21st is when the sun kind of stops its journey north and it begins once again moving south. And so the longest day of the year will be on June 21st, which means the sun is rising pretty darn early right now. It's rising at about 5:45 here in the DC area. But I'm hoping to watch it this Saturday, so you can look for that there. But yeah, my relatives, thanks for joining me. Walk in beauty, and may we learn all how to walk in beauty together. Hakone.